I still remember the chill that ran down my spine when he walked up to me. It wasn't the cold of the room, nor the heavy scent of lilies and grief in the air. No, it was the icy look on his face. The man I had once loved, the father of my children, now seemed like a stranger, standing just inches away, holding something I could never have expected. The moment would haunt me forever, I knew that much. My father's funeral wasn't supposed to be about me. It wasn't supposed to be about anything other than saying goodbye to the man who had been my rock, my mentor, my father. But it had become something else entirely. Something so much darker. The funeral was a blur, everyone offering their condolences, hugging me, whispering sweet words about how strong I was. But my heart wasn't in it. I kept glancing over at my husband, Henry, as he stood there with our children, their faces solemn, their eyes glued to the casket. Henry, though, his eyes weren't on the casket. They were on me. Cold. As if I were no more than a passing acquaintance. A mere formality. We had been married for 30 years. 30 years of life together. 30 years of building a family, a home. And yet, in that moment, standing there at my father's funeral, I couldn't recognize the man beside me. The years of laughter, the shared secrets, the moments of tenderness. It all felt so far away now, like someone else's life. Someone else's past. The worst part. I knew something was coming. Something I wasn't prepared for. It had been building for months. I could feel it in the way he looked at me, in the way he withdrew from me, in the cold silence that had settled between us like a thick fog. And now, standing there, I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, in the way his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. I saw it in the way he looked past me, as if I didn't even exist. Then it happened. He walked up to me, his gait firm, deliberate. My children, our children, flanked him, standing close like they were on a mission. They barely acknowledged me as they took their positions beside him, their smiles directed at a woman I didn't recognize. She was standing in the back, her blonde hair shining under the dim light, her outfit too polished, too perfect. My stomach churned as I realized she wasn't a guest. She was far more than that. Henry's mistress, I presumed, but there was something in the way my children smiled at her that sent a surge of panic through me. I tried to remain composed, my hands gripping the envelope in my hands, the paper crinkling under the pressure of my fingers. I had no idea what was in it, but I could already feel the weight of it, the heaviness of what was about to happen. Ryan, my eldest, broke the silence. His voice was soft, but the words hit me like a slap in the face. "She's now our new mom," he said, the smile on his face making my stomach twist even further. I tried to blink away the tears that threatened to rise, but they wouldn't stop. My world was falling apart right before my eyes. I had given everything to them. My love, my sacrifices, my loyalty. And yet here they were, replacing me with a stranger. But I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I didn't even cry. I simply smiled. The smile that no one would ever understand. The smile that had been months in the making. The smile that was part of my plan, my carefully laid out plan. Henry didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He just handed me the envelope. It was thick, heavy. My heart sank as I took it from his hand. The weight of it felt like a death sentence. I turned it over, the seal glistening in the low light, my name scrawled on the front in his sharp, meticulous handwriting. I opened it slowly, the sound of the paper tearing too loud in the heavy silence. Inside, the divorce papers stared up at me, mocking me. My hands trembled as I read through the contents, each line cutting deeper into my soul. It was happening. He was leaving me. Not just leaving me, though. He was taking everything, our home, our life, everything we built together. And in front of my father's casket, no less. But I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I didn't even cry. I simply smiled. The trap had already been set. As I stood there, holding the papers in my hands, I heard the whispers around me grow louder. People were watching me, their eyes filled with sympathy, some even with pity. They didn't know what was happening. They didn't know what had been happening behind closed doors for the past few months. They didn't know that I had already been planning this. They didn't know what I had been setting into motion. I glanced over at the woman standing in the back again. She was waiting for me to break, to crumble. But that's not what was going to happen. Not today. I could hear my children laughing softly, talking among themselves. Their voices were a distant hum, like a dream I couldn't quite reach. How could they be so blind? How could they so easily replace me with someone else, with her? But it didn't matter. They had no idea what I had been doing behind the scenes. They had no idea that the last few months had been about more than just my husband's betrayal. They had no idea that they were about to lose everything. The smile I gave Henry was no longer one of sorrow. It wasn't one of defeat. It was the smile of someone who had just been given a gift. I took a deep breath, folded the papers, and stuffed them back into the envelope. "I hope you're happy, Henry," I whispered, my voice steady. He didn't hear me, or maybe he didn't care. Either way, he turned and walked away, his arm around her, the woman who was now his new mom, in front of our children. My children. I watched them follow him, not even a second glance in my direction. They had already chosen their side. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know that my plan was already set in motion. And as soon as they thought they had everything, they would be the ones losing it all. The trap was already set. The pieces had already fallen into place. I would not let them win. Not this time. As I stood there, watching my family turn their backs on me, a thought crossed my mind. What will happen when they realize what I've been planning? Will they even be able to stop it? I could hear the whispers growing louder around me, but there was one thing I was sure of. They had just sealed their own fate. And they would never see it coming. The days that followed were a blur. My father's funeral was behind me, but the aftershock of that moment at his casket, of watching my family walk away from me, stayed with me, gnawing at my insides. It was a strange kind of emptiness, one that I'd never felt before. Like I had just been left behind, discarded. I don't remember much about the rest of that day, how I got home, what I did, who I spoke to, but I do remember one thing. The envelope. The divorce papers. I couldn't stop thinking about them. They haunted me. The house felt so much quieter without the noise of my children and Henry's presence. There was something eerie about the stillness. I sat in the living room, the silence wrapping itself around me like a suffocating blanket. My hands kept trembling as I gripped the envelope, wondering just how long they had been planning this behind my back. How long had they known? How long had Henry been seeing her? Was it months, years? I didn't know. But I had a feeling the answer would come soon enough. And when it did, it would burn everything to the ground. I would make sure of it. I spent the next few days in a fog, almost as if I were walking through someone else's life. It was hard to grasp what had happened. What was happening? I kept telling myself I should be angry. I should be screaming. I should be doing something. But every time I thought about it, the anger didn't come. Instead, there was this calm, a strange sense of peace. A sense that everything was falling exactly as it should. I began to prepare for the next phase. The next step in my plan. It was hard to believe that I, of all people, had come to this. That my life, my marriage, would end this way. But then again, maybe it shouldn't have been so surprising. Wasn't betrayal always lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike? I had spent so much of my life giving to my family, to my children, to my husband. I had sacrificed everything for them. Every ounce of my energy, my love, my very soul. And now, here I was, standing alone in the wreckage of everything I had built. But I wasn't defeated. Well, I was far from it. I knew my children didn't understand. They didn't know what it was like to be married for 30 years, to give everything to a man who swore to love you, to care for you. They didn't know the depth of the betrayal, of the years spent building a life that Henry was so willing to throw away for a woman they'd never met. But they would understand. In time they would understand. I began to make calls. I'd already started gathering information in secret, long before the divorce papers arrived. There were things Henry didn't know, things that, once revealed, would bring him to his knees. I knew how he worked, knew how he thought. I knew what strings to pull, what buttons to push. It wasn't going to be enough to just expose him to the world. No, I needed to break him to make him understand exactly what he had done. I needed to show him that he couldn't just walk away from me, from our life, without consequences. The next day, I went to the lawyer's office. I was calm, collected. On the outside, I looked like the grieving widow who had just lost everything. On the inside, I was a storm. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Walker," the lawyer said when I entered. He was a tall man, neatly dressed in a black suit. His hair combed back in a way that made him look almost too polished. "What can I do for you today?" "I need your help," I said, my voice steady. "I need to make sure my husband doesn't get away with this." He raised an eyebrow. "I see. Are you sure you want to proceed with the divorce? It's a complicated matter." I smiled, though it wasn't a warm smile. It was more like a mask, hiding the cold fury beneath. "I'm not here for the divorce," I said softly. "I'm here for something much worse." He studied me for a moment, and I could see the gears turning in his head. Finally he nodded. "All right, Mrs. Walker. Tell me what you need." I slid a folder across the table to him. "This is a list of everything I've uncovered. Financial records, secret accounts, investments, things he thought no one would ever find out about. Things he thought I wouldn't notice." His eyes widened as he flipped through the pages, his professional demeanor faltering for a moment. This is extraordinary. How did you?" "I've been watching him for months," I interrupted. "And now I want him to pay for every lie, every betrayal. I want him to lose everything." The lawyer nodded slowly, as if taking in the full weight of my request. "You understand this could take time. It's going to be a complicated process. But with these documents, we have enough to bring him down." "Good," I said, my voice hardening. "Take it to the highest bidder, make sure it goes public. Let him see what it feels like to lose everything." He paused, giving me a look that said he didn't fully understand the depth of my anger. But that was fine. He didn't need to. "I'll start immediately," he said, closing the folder and standing up. "This is going to be a long road, Mrs. Walker. But we'll make sure he doesn't get away with it." I stood up as well, my heart beating faster. "He won't," I said softly. "He won't." As I walked out of the office, a strange calm settled over me. I had done it. I had taken the first step. But as I stepped into the cool air outside, something gnawed at me. I wasn't sure how far this would go, how deep I was willing to dig. But one thing was certain: Henry would pay. And I would make sure that he knew exactly what he had lost. And just as I reached for my car door, my phone buzzed. I looked down at the screen, my breath catching in my throat. It was a message from Ryan. "Mom, we need to talk. It's about her." The message from Ryan sat on my phone screen like a ticking time bomb. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, uncertain whether I should respond immediately or let it sit there, taunting me. The calm I'd felt just moments before had quickly been replaced by a sickening anxiety that twisted my stomach into knots. This was it, the moment when everything would start to unravel. I had known this day would come. It was inevitable. But seeing Ryan's name on the screen, his words demanding attention, somehow made the whole situation feel even more real. He wasn't a little boy anymore. He was a grown man, and now he was asking to talk. But about what? About the woman who had somehow become his new mom. Or about the truth he was still too blind to see. I took a deep breath and texted back. "What about her?" I didn't want to engage too much, not yet. Not until I knew more. I had no intention of letting him off the hook without getting what I needed. Not now, not when I was so close. The phone vibrated almost immediately. His reply was short but direct. "Can you meet me tomorrow? It's important." I stood there for a moment, staring at the screen. My pulse quickened, and I felt a familiar sense of dread creep into my chest. Tomorrow. I'd already planned for so much, already set the stage for everything that was about to happen. But now things felt different. Meeting with Ryan, talking with him, would mean I had to face the part of me I had been ignoring. The mother who loved her children, no matter how much they had betrayed her. But what did he want? And more importantly, what did he know? I couldn't risk being caught off guard. Not now. I decided to meet him. I would have to play the part of the concerned mother, the one who would listen, who would nod and pretend to understand. But inside I was already making my plans, already calculating the next steps. There was no turning back. The next day, I drove to the small cafe where Ryan had suggested we meet. It was a place we used to frequent as a family, back when life was simple, back when everything felt right. The memories hit me like a wave as I pulled into the parking lot. I didn't know if I should be angry or sad, but both emotions were simmering just beneath the surface. I stepped out of the car, trying to shake off the weight of the past. It wasn't about the past anymore. It wasn't about Henry or our broken marriage. It was about Ryan, about my children. I had to focus on them, on how to fix what they had broken. I walked inside the cafe, and my eyes immediately found him. He was sitting by the window, his head slightly bent over a cup of coffee, staring into the distance. His usual confident demeanor was absent, replaced by something unfamiliar. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it made me hesitate for a moment. I took a deep breath and walked toward him. He looked up as I approached, his face softening slightly. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Regret. Guilt. "Mom," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "Thank you for meeting me." I sat down across from him, studying his face. "Of course," I replied, my voice calm, collected. "What's going on, Ryan? You said it was important." He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, setting his coffee cup down with a clink. His hands gripped the edges of the table, knuckles white. This wasn't the confident young man I had raised. This was a son who was struggling, who didn't know how to face his own decisions. I don't know how to say this," he started, glancing at the door as if searching for a way to escape. "But there's a lot I don't understand. About you, about everything that's happened. I don't know what's real anymore." My heart skipped a beat. I had to be careful. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when everything could change. "What do you mean?" I asked softly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Ryan looked at me with a mix of confusion and hurt. "Dad's been acting weird. And the woman, her name's Lisa, she's been around a lot. But something feels off, Mom. I don't understand why you're not here with us. I don't understand why you've let him do this." I could see the hurt in his eyes, the cracks in his armor. He was still my son after all. But the truth was, he had already made his choice. He had already chosen Henry's side. And now, here he was, sitting across from me, wanting answers to questions I couldn't give him. Or at least not the ones he expected. "Ryan," I began, choosing my words carefully. "You have no idea what's really been going on. You've only seen part of the story. Your father, he's been hiding things from all of us. And now, you're all caught in the middle." Ryan's face tightened, his jaw setting in that familiar way. "What do you mean, hiding things? You're not making sense, Mom." I leaned back in my chair, letting out a long sigh. This wasn't how I had imagined this conversation going. I had expected anger, bitterness, questions that would pierce my heart. But now it was something else. It was confusion. And that was far more dangerous. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and for the first time in months, I saw the little boy who used to need me. "I've been planning everything," I said softly. "The papers Henry gave me, the divorce, they were just the beginning. But you don't need to know everything right now, Ryan. Not yet." His eyes widened, the confusion in them growing. "Planning? What are you talking about?" Before I could respond, the door to the cafe opened, and a cold gust of wind swept through the room. Ryan's attention shifted, his gaze moving to the doorway. And that's when I saw it. The woman. Lisa. She was standing there, looking around the room as if she owned the place. Her eyes locked with mine for a moment, and I saw the subtle smirk that tugged at the corners of her mouth. I didn't have to say anything. She had already made her presence known. She had been trying to get to Ryan. She had been trying to replace me. And now here she was testing the waters. Ryan stood up quickly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Mom, I have to go. I'll call you later." His voice was shaky, and he didn't meet my eyes as he walked away, leaving me alone with the woman who had destroyed everything. Lisa's eyes remained fixed on me as she slowly made her way toward the table, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. "Well, well, look who it is," she said with a grin, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I was wondering when we'd get a chance to talk." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Not to her. But as she stood there, I realized something. The trap I had set was closer to being sprung than I had ever imagined. And Lisa. She had no idea what was coming for her. Lisa's eyes were gleaming, filled with confidence. She thought she had won. She thought she had taken everything from me. But she hadn't. Not yet. And she never would. Lisa's smirk lingered in the air between us, her confident posture a stark contrast to the storm of emotions that churned inside me. I could feel the weight of everything, the years of sacrifice, the broken trust, the looming betrayal, all pressing down on me. But I wasn't about to let her see that. Not yet. She took a step closer, and the noise of the cafe seemed to fade away, leaving only her voice, cold and cutting. "So, what's this all about, huh?" she asked, her eyes scanning my face, trying to read me. "I know you're upset, but let's face facts, you lost. Henry's with me now. Your kids, they're with us." Her words were sharp like knives, but I just sat there, my hands folded neatly in front of me, my expression calm. She was baiting me, trying to provoke some reaction, anything to break me. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I'd spent too many years giving everything for my family, only to be left in the dust. No more. Now it was my turn to take control. I looked at her, and for the first time I allowed myself to truly study her. The perfect hair, the designer clothes, the confident swagger she carried with her everywhere. She looked like the kind of woman who thought she could have it all, who thought she could just step into my life, into my place. But I knew something she didn't. She was still playing a game she didn't understand. A game she was going to lose. "Lisa," I said, my voice calm though inside my blood was boiling. "You have no idea what you're walking into. This isn't just about Henry or my children. This is about me, about what I've built, about everything I've sacrificed. And trust me, you won't win this." Her smirk faltered for just a moment, but it was gone before I could even blink. She leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, I'm not the one who's losing here. You are," she said, her voice low, almost mocking. "Henry made his choice. Your children made theirs. You're the one left behind, old and bitter. It's time to move on." I could feel my heart racing, but I didn't let her see it. Instead, I just smiled, a cold, calculating smile that made her pause. "I'm not bitter," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not old either. But I am smart. Smarter than you think." She raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but still refusing to acknowledge the threat in my words. "Is that so? Henry thinks he can take everything from me," I continued, my voice growing a bit stronger, the power in my words beginning to resonate. "He thinks he can just hand me divorce papers and walk away with a clean slate. He doesn't realize how much I've been preparing for this. For you. You think you've won, but you're just the final piece of a very carefully laid out plan." Lisa's smile faltered just for a moment, but it was enough to give me the confidence I needed. The seed of doubt was planted. She could feel it. She was starting to wonder just how much I knew, just how much I had been holding back. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked, her voice turning icy, though she was clearly trying to mask the uncertainty in her eyes. "It means," I said, leaning forward slightly, locking eyes with her, "that the game isn't over. You might have Henry's attention for now, but you don't have him in the ways that matter. You don't have control of what's truly his. And you certainly don't know what I'm capable of." Her eyes widened for just a moment, and I could see the slight shift in her expression, the subtle crack in her facade. She wasn't as confident as she wanted me to believe. She was scared. She should be. I stood up slowly, taking my time, savoring the moment. "You're nothing more than a distraction," I said quietly, my voice now colder than the wind outside. "I'll deal with you when the time comes. But right now, I have bigger things to handle." I turned and started to walk away, but before I reached the door, I glanced back over my shoulder. Lisa was still standing there, frozen in place, her eyes locked on mine. Her perfect mask was slipping, and for the first time I saw the fear behind it. The fear that she knew she was in over her head. "Don't forget," I said, my words laced with a finality that I knew would stick with her. "You think you've won, but I'm the one who gets the last laugh." And with that, I walked out of the cafe, leaving her standing there, alone and exposed. She had no idea what was coming for her. I didn't know what Henry and Lisa had been planning, but I knew one thing. I had been planning this for far longer. And every move I made from here on out would be calculated. I wouldn't let them destroy me. I would destroy them first. I spent the next few hours at home, pacing back and forth, making more calls, ensuring everything was falling into place. The lawyer would be working on the public release of the documents soon. I needed to make sure that Henry didn't have time to react. The walls were closing in on him, and the pressure would only increase. But there was still one more piece to deal with. My children. They were caught in the middle of all this, torn between their father and me. They had no idea what had truly been happening behind the scenes. They had no idea that I had been preparing for this day, for this betrayal, long before it had actually come. I knew they'd come to me eventually. They'd have no choice. They'd realize their mistake. And when they did, I'd be waiting. The trap was already set. The last thing I needed to do was pull the final lever, and everything would come crashing down on them. Just as I was preparing to make the next move, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway. "Mrs. Walker." The voice on the other end was low, clipped. "This is Agent McAllister. I have something you need to hear. It's about your husband." I sat frozen for a moment as the voice on the other end of the phone continued to speak. The name Agent McAllister didn't mean anything to me at first, but the tone of his voice, so serious and urgent, sent a chill down my spine. The words were sinking in, slowly, but unmistakably. Something was happening. Something big. "Agent McAllister," I repeated softly, the weight of his words making my chest tighten. "What's this about? I don't have time for games." "I assure you, Mrs. Walker, this is no game," he said. "I have some information about your husband, Henry. And I believe you need to hear it." My mind immediately raced. Henry. What could it possibly be? What had he done now? Was this related to the divorce, to the affair with Lisa? Or was there something more? Something deeper that I hadn't uncovered yet? "I'm listening," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though inside, my pulse was quickening. "There's been an investigation," Agent McAllister continued, his voice low but firm. "And I believe your husband is involved in something much bigger than a simple divorce. We've been tracking a financial scheme, a series of illegal transactions, and Henry Walker's name keeps coming up." My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't what I expected. A financial scheme. Henry had always been good with money, yes, but I never imagined he would go this far. This was more than just betrayal, it was criminal. "Are you saying Henry's involved in some sort of illegal activity?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Agent McAllister said, his tone grave. "And I think you need to know exactly what we've found. It's more than just a few shady deals. It's serious. Money laundering. Fraud. It's been going on for years, right under your nose." I leaned back in my chair, the phone pressing heavily against my ear as the weight of his words sunk in. This wasn't just about a broken marriage. This was a revelation that could change everything. My entire world, my family, my life was built on lies. Henry's lies. "How do you know all of this?" I managed to ask, my throat dry. "We've been investigating him for some time now," he said, his voice remaining calm, though I could sense the urgency behind his words. "The problem is, we don't have enough evidence to make a solid case against him. That's where you come in, Mrs. Walker. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Me? How could I possibly help with this? I was just a woman who had been wronged by her husband, a woman who had spent her entire marriage being deceived. What could I do now that I hadn't already been doing? We've been tracking the financial records, but we need someone on the inside, he continued. Someone who knows his behavior, someone who can get close to him again. Someone who can get their hands on the documents we need to build a case. That person is you. I stared blankly at the wall across the room, unsure of what to say. This wasn't part of my plan. I hadn't expected any of this. I had only wanted to expose him for what he'd done, for how he'd betrayed me, for how he'd hurt our children. But now I had a chance to take him down, not just for what he did to me, but for the damage he'd done to others. How? I asked, my voice barely audible. How can I help? By getting close to him, Agent McAllister said. By digging into his financial dealings, his assets, everything. We need to find out who he's been working with, who he's been hiding money for. It's going to be risky, but I'm confident that you can do this. You have the access, the insight into his behavior. All we need is the evidence. My mind raced as I processed his words. Risky. Of course it was risky. It was dangerous. But this was bigger than just me getting revenge on a cheating husband. This was about justice. This was about stopping a criminal, someone who had been hiding in plain sight for years, someone I had loved, someone I had trusted. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. But I knew deep down that this was the right thing to do. I wasn't just going to let Henry destroy me and walk away unscathed. I wasn't going to be the victim. Not anymore. I'll do it, I said, my voice steady, though my hands were shaking. I'll help you. I'll do whatever it takes. Good, Agent McAllister replied. We'll send you the details. But be careful. Henry is clever, and if he suspects anything, it could be the end of this whole operation. Don't let him see what you're doing. I nodded, though I knew he couldn't see me. I understand. I'll be careful. After a brief exchange of details and some final instructions, I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the empty room, trying to absorb everything that had just happened. My life had already been turned upside down by betrayal. Now, it was about to be shaken up even further. I stood up slowly, my hands still trembling, my thoughts scattered. I had a decision to make, and it wasn't just about taking down Henry. It was about protecting my children, about saving them from a man who had manipulated them just as much as he had manipulated me. I needed to think. I needed to plan. I needed to become the person who could make him pay for everything. I walked to my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept all the papers, the ones Henry had thought I'd forgotten about. The bank statements, the receipts, the documents I'd been collecting for months, the ones that proved his deceit. I gathered everything, laid it out on the desk. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. And now I had to be the one to fit them together. Just as I was reviewing the papers, a knock on the door startled me. It was quick and urgent. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't expecting anyone. Who could it be? I slowly walked to the door, my mind racing. As I opened it, I was met with the last person I expected to see. It was Ryan. And his face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. Ryan stood in the doorway, his face pale and drawn. His eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. Fear. Anxiety. Or maybe it was guilt. Guilt for being caught up in something he still didn't fully understand. I wasn't sure, but his appearance at my door wasn't what I had expected. I hadn't seen him in a few days, not since our meeting at the cafe. He'd left abruptly, and I hadn't heard from him since. The phone call, the message from Lisa, the lawyer, the trap I'd set, all of it had consumed my thoughts. But now, seeing him standing there, I couldn't deny the shift in the air. Something had changed. Ryan, what's going on? I asked, keeping my voice steady, trying to mask the uncertainty I felt. Why are you here? He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His movements hurried, almost desperate. Mom, you need to listen to me. I don't know what's going on, but something's wrong. I need to tell you something. Something I found. I closed the door behind him, my mind racing. What had he found? Was it connected to Henry? Was he finally beginning to understand what had been going on behind closed doors? Or was it something else entirely? I've been looking into some things, Ryan continued, his voice shaky. Things I shouldn't have. I didn't want to believe it, but now I can't ignore it. You were right, Mom. About Dad. About everything. My heart skipped a beat. The words I had been waiting to hear, the words I had longed for, were finally coming from him. Ryan was starting to see through the lies. But the relief I felt was quickly replaced by a rush of dread. What had he discovered? What do you mean? I asked, taking a step toward him, trying to remain calm. What exactly did you find? He handed me a folder, a thick stack of papers that had clearly been rifled through. My fingers trembled as I took it from him, the weight of the information it held pressing heavily in my hands. I found some of Dad's accounts, Ryan said, his eyes wide. Offshore accounts. Money being transferred between them, all under fake names. It's not just about the divorce, Mom. He's been hiding things from us for years. And it's not just him, Lisa too. She's involved in this. I flipped through the papers, my mind racing. What was Ryan telling me? I could see the names, the accounts, everything Henry had been hiding, everything I'd suspected but hadn't known for sure. But there was something else buried in the papers, something that caught my eye. A transfer. A large sum of money, sent to an unknown account just days before my father's funeral. My breath caught in my throat. Ryan! I whispered, my voice trembling. What is this? Ryan swallowed hard, his face full of regret. I don't know, Mom. But it doesn't look good. This isn't just about your inheritance or the divorce. This is something much worse. I think Dad's been involved in illegal activities. Money laundering, fraud. And I think Lisa knew about it. She's been helping him cover it up. My head was spinning. The walls I had spent so many years building with Henry, the trust one had placed in him, were crumbling before my eyes. I had suspected he was hiding things, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I could feel my hands shaking as I held the papers. Everything was starting to connect in ways I hadn't expected. But what I didn't understand was why Ryan was telling me this now. Why had he suddenly come to me with the truth? Why didn't you come to me sooner? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell me about this? Ryan looked away, guilt written all over his face. I didn't want to believe it, Mom. I didn't want to believe that everything we had was built on lies. I didn't want to think Dad could do something like this to us. I felt a pang in my chest, a mix of sadness and anger. I had always known that Ryan was still a child in so many ways, still trying to make sense of the world around him. But now he was standing here, handing me the truth on a silver platter, and it felt like my whole life had just come crashing down around me. I took a deep breath and set the papers down on the table, trying to steady my hands. We have to act on this, I said, my voice firm. We can't just let him get away with this. This is bigger than me, bigger than you. We have to bring him down. Ryan nodded, his eyes filled with resolve. I know. I'm with you, Mom. I didn't know how to face you. But now I see it. Now I understand what you've been trying to do. I walked over to him and placed my hand on his shoulder, squeezing it gently. You did the right thing, Ryan. I'm proud of you for finding the truth. I wasn't sure if it was pride I felt or something else, something darker. Because I knew now that I was walking down a dangerous path. A path that would not only change my life but would shatter everything my children thought they knew. As Ryan and I stood there, trying to make sense of everything, my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced down at the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. It was from Agent McAllister. Mrs. Walker, we have a problem. Your husband and Lisa are planning to flee the country. We need to act now, or we'll lose them. The phone slipped from my hand and landed on the counter with a soft thud. I stood there, frozen, my mind racing as the words from Agent McAllister echoed in my head. They're planning to flee the country. The implications hit me like a freight train. Henry, Lisa, they were about to run. All of their lies, all of their deceit, all the months I'd spent preparing for this moment. Could it really all slip through my fingers? I felt the cold sting of panic, but I quickly shoved it aside. Panic wasn't going to help me. Action would. Had to think. I had to stay ahead of them. If they thought they could run away and leave everything behind, they had another thing coming. I had been planning for months, and I wasn't about to let them get away with it. Ryan, I said, my voice shaking only slightly. I need you to listen to me. Ryan, still sitting across from me, looked up, his face pale. His mind clearly reeling from everything I just told him. But when I spoke, he snapped into focus, locking his gaze on mine. What is it, Mom? What's going on? They're leaving, I said, my voice a mixture of urgency and determination. Henry and Lisa. They're planning to run. Flee the country. And we need to stop them. Ryan's eyes widened. What? How? How do we even begin to stop them? I took a deep breath, trying to center myself as I moved toward the desk, where the papers lay scattered. I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me. I needed to stay cold, calculated. If I didn't, they'd win. I sat down, my fingers skimming over the documents Ryan had given me. This wasn't just about the money. It was about everything, about taking back what was mine, about proving to Henry and Lisa that they couldn't just destroy my family and walk away with their stolen winnings. I picked up the phone, dialing Agent McAllister's number with a steady hand. The line rang, each second feeling like an eternity. When he picked up, I wasted no time. We need to act now, I said, my voice firm. Where are they going? Where are they running? I've been tracking them, McAllister replied, his voice tight with urgency. We don't have much time. They've booked flights for tomorrow night. Destination, London. They plan to lay low there, make their escape, and disappear. But there's still time to catch them. I closed my eyes, taking in the gravity of the situation. They were running together, and they thought they could get away with it. But they were wrong. They had no idea what I had prepared. I want to help you stop them, I said. But we need a plan. I can't do this alone. You won't have to, McAllister responded, a note of reassurance in his voice. We've got agents in place to intercept them. But we need your cooperation. If you can get us more details on their financial transactions, any information you have on their movements, assets, accounts, it'll help us make the case stronger. I'll get it, I said without hesitation. I'll get you everything. I hung up, turning to Ryan, who was watching me closely, the weight of the situation settling in his eyes. Mom, this is huge. Are you sure you want to go through with it? If you help them catch Dad, it could ruin everything. Life. Our family. I paused, the gravity of Ryan's words hitting me. But then I thought about everything Henry had done. I thought about the betrayal, the lies, how he had used me, how he had used our children to cover his own tracks. And I thought about the woman standing beside him, thinking she could replace me. She would never understand the depths of what he had done. I couldn't let them get away with it. I wouldn't. We have no choice, I said, my voice hardening. If we don't act now, they'll get away, and we'll never have a chance to make things right. This isn't just about me, Ryan. It's about everything we've lost. About the truth. We're going to bring them down together. Ryan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he just nodded, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. All right, Mom. I'm with you. We'll do this. I gave him a reassuring smile, though I wasn't sure if I was convincing him or myself. We need to move fast, I said. We can't let them get away. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself back at the lawyer's office. The walls were closing in, and I knew I couldn't afford to waste any time. I had to get every shred of evidence I could find, every document, every transaction, everything Henry had tried so hard to hide from me. The lawyer, who had been working quietly behind the scenes, was already waiting for me when I walked in. He looked up as I entered, his face tight with concern. "You have news, Mrs. Walker?" he asked, his voice low, careful. "I have everything," I said, setting the pile of papers down on his desk. "And I need you to make this public. We need to stop Henry and Lisa from fleeing the country." The lawyer's eyes widened slightly as he saw the documents. This is serious. This could bring him down completely. "But you're sure? Once we make this public, there's no going back." "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady. "Do it." He nodded, gathering the papers. "All right. I'll start the process. We'll get this into the right hands immediately." I left the lawyer's office that night feeling like I had taken the first real step in taking back control. I didn't know how much time we had left before Henry and Lisa tried to slip through the cracks, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them disappear. I had been patient for too long, and now the moment of reckoning was here. The next morning, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was McAllister again. "Mrs. Walker, I have bad news," he said, his voice tense. "We've lost track of them. They've moved faster than we anticipated. We need to act now. They've already boarded the plane." Froze. The trap had been set. But was it too late? The words Agent McAllister spoke echoed in my ears long after I hung up the phone. "They've already boarded the plane." The rush of panic that hit me was almost overwhelming. But I had no time to lose. I had to act. There was no more time for hesitation, no more time to sit back and let things unfold. Henry and Lisa were running, and I was about to chase them down, no matter the cost. I grabbed my purse and rushed out of the house, feeling the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders. This was it. Everything I had been working toward, every shred of evidence I had gathered, was leading to this exact moment. It was time to bring them to justice. The air outside felt cooler than usual, a biting reminder that I was racing against the clock. I didn't have a plan beyond the lawyer's involvement, beyond the vague details I had been given. But I couldn't let that stop me. I couldn't let the uncertainty of the situation dictate how I moved forward. I drove straight to the airport. As I pulled into the parking lot, I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. This wasn't just about Henry anymore. This was about everything I had worked for. The life I had built, the lies I had endured, and the betrayal that had been eating at me for months. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for my children, for the family that I had once believed was unbreakable. I walked into the terminal, my mind focused and sharp, the sound of my heels clicking loudly on the floor as I made my way toward the departure gate. I had already arranged for a few things with McAllister. Agents were stationed nearby, ready to assist if needed. But I needed to do this myself. I needed to confront Henry and Lisa face to face. I moved quickly, bypassing the security check-in. No time for lines, no time for questions. I made my way straight to the gate, where I saw a small crowd gathered, a mixture of passengers and onlookers. My heart raced as I scanned the crowd, looking for any sign of Henry or Lisa. There they were. The gate. Henry, standing tall and smug as always, his arm around Lisa's shoulders. They looked so normal, like they were just another couple off to enjoy their lives. It was infuriating to see them so carefree, so untouched by the chaos they had caused. I wanted to scream, to run up to them and demand answers. But I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I stepped into the line, my gaze never leaving them. They hadn't noticed me yet, and that was fine. I had all the time in the world. I was going to make sure they didn't get away this time. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I neared the gate. The countdown had begun. They were about to board the plane, and I had one shot to stop them. If I failed now, they'd slip through my fingers for good. The gate agent called for boarding, and I knew this was it. Henry and Lisa moved toward the gate, still blissfully unaware of what was coming. I was close enough now, close enough to hear their conversation. "Do you think they'll try to stop us?" Lisa asked, her voice dripping with arrogance. "They can try," Henry replied, his tone filled with confidence. "But they won't be able to do anything. We've planned this for too long. No one can stop us." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms as the words cut through me like a knife. He was so sure of himself, so sure that he could walk away and leave me behind. But he was wrong. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not now. Not after everything. Just as they approached the gate, I stepped forward, walking directly into their path. Henry froze when he saw me, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. He hadn't expected to see me here, not after everything that had happened. Lisa's gaze shifted between Henry and me, confusion flickering in her eyes before she quickly masked it with a smug smile. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "Come to beg him to come back to you. It's over. Get over it." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stood there, locking eyes with Henry, watching as his expression shifted from surprise to anger. He knew what I was capable of. He knew how far I was willing to go to make him pay for everything he'd done. And for a moment, I saw the fear in his eyes. "You're not going anywhere," I said quietly, my voice firm and unwavering. "You think you can run, that you can just leave and hide from everything. But you're wrong." Henry opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand, silencing him. "You're under arrest," I said, my voice ringing out with authority, surprising even myself. "For fraud, money laundering, and several other crimes. You're not going anywhere until the authorities get here." For a moment there was silence. Henry's face was a mix of disbelief and rage. Lisa looked at me like I had lost my mind. But then, just as quickly as it had begun, the illusion of control Henry had over this situation shattered. Behind me, 2 agents stepped forward, their presence intimidating. One of them was McAllister. His expression was unreadable, but I could see the faintest glimmer of approval in his eyes. "You have the right to remain silent," McAllister said, stepping up beside me. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Henry and Lisa didn't move. They were trapped. There was no escape now. No plane to flee on. No place left to hide. I watched as the agents moved in to handcuff Henry, his face turning red with rage. Lisa, too, was in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. "You think you can just take everything from me," I said, my voice steady, though the weight of everything that had happened still threatened to crush me. "But you're wrong. I'm not the victim anymore. I'm the one who's going to make sure you pay." As the agents led Henry and Lisa away, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, my heart skipping a beat when I saw the message. "We've got your kids. They're with us now. You have 24 hours to make a decision. They're your leverage. If you want them back, you'll do what we say." Froze. This wasn't over. This had just begun. The words on my phone screen burned through my mind like wildfire. "We've got your kids. They're with us now. You have 24 hours to make a decision. They're your leverage. If you want them back, you'll do what we say." My stomach lurched, a cold sweat breaking out across my skin as I read the message again. My breath hitched. My first instinct was to react, to storm the world with rage, to demand answers, to break down the door to wherever they were holding Ryan and the others. But I couldn't. I knew better. My plan had already spiraled into a nightmare, and it wasn't going to be solved with impulsive decisions. I looked at Henry and Lisa as they were escorted toward a holding area by the agents, their faces expressions of shock, disbelief, and in Henry's case, a faint glimmer of fear. They thought they had been outsmarting me. They thought they had taken control. But now I had leverage. I had the upper hand. Or at least, that's what I told myself. The truth was, I wasn't so sure anymore. The moment I read that message, the confidence I had built for so long wavered. My children were my everything. They were the reason I had endured Henry's betrayal, the reason I had kept going despite all the obstacles. And now, someone was using them as pawns in a game I wasn't prepared to play. I stared at the message one more time, my fingers trembling as I typed a reply. "Where are they? What do you want from me? The message seemed to burn into my screen, each word feeling heavier than the last. I hit send, then held my breath. My mind raced. Who could possibly be behind this? Was it someone connected to Henry's criminal activities? Or was it someone else, someone I hadn't even considered? Seconds felt like hours as I waited for the reply. Finally it came. Meet us at the old warehouse on Greenfield Avenue. We'll be waiting. Don't bring the cops. I stared at the words, a heavy pit settling in my stomach. I knew that warehouse. It was abandoned, isolated. Not far from here, but far enough to make it a place where no one would hear you scream. I didn't hesitate. I couldn't afford to waste time. I had 24 hours to make the most important decision of my life. The drive to the warehouse felt surreal. The night had settled in, casting the world in deep shadows, the streets empty and quiet. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. My heart pounded against my ribcage. Every few minutes, I'd glance at the clock, feeling the seconds slip away. Every moment mattered. I couldn't help but think of Ryan and my other children locked away somewhere, in the hands of people who had no idea what they were playing with. Henry had always been a schemer, always thinking he was in control. But now it was my turn. I was the one calling the shots, and I would make sure they knew just how far I was willing to go. The warehouse came into view, its looming silhouette standing stark against the night sky. I parked at a distance, far enough to keep my car hidden, but close enough to make a quick getaway if needed. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped out of the car, the air cold and thick with tension. This was it. The moment where everything could either fall into place or shatter completely. I walked slowly toward the entrance, every step feeling heavier than the last. As I approached, the faint sound of footsteps reached my ears. Two figures stepped out from the shadows. Men, their faces obscured by hoods. They didn't say anything as they motioned for me to follow them inside. I did as they said, my mind racing. What were they planning? Were they really holding my children, or was this just another mind game? I needed to stay calm. I couldn't let fear control me. Not now. Not after everything I had been through. The warehouse was dark, except for a single light hanging from the ceiling. I could make out the shapes of crates and old machinery scattered around the large, empty space. And then, in the far corner, I saw them. Ryan. My heart stopped for a moment, the relief flooding over me as I saw him standing there, looking confused but unharmed. But as my gaze shifted to the others, my blood ran cold. There were more people. Lisa. And Henry. They were all there, sitting quietly, looking up at me. Henry's face was hard, but I could see the faintest trace of fear in his eyes. Lisa, on the other hand, looked smug, like she was finally getting what she wanted. I stood still, my eyes scanning the room, taking everything in. The figures who had brought me here stepped back, disappearing into the shadows as they watched me closely. I was alone with my family. And my enemies. Do you know what this is about, Sarah? Henry's voice broke the silence, cold and emotionless. He stood up, walking toward me with slow, deliberate steps. You're making a big mistake. You've gone too far. I didn't move. Couldn't. Every fiber of my being wanted to scream at him, to let him know just how much he had destroyed, but I kept my mouth shut. The silence was more powerful than anything I could say. Instead, I looked at Ryan, who was standing next to the other two children. He seemed hesitant, his eyes full of questions. I could see it, the doubt, the confusion, the realization that he had been caught in a web far bigger than he had ever imagined. You've done enough damage, Sarah, Lisa added, her voice dripping with malice. Henry and I are starting over. This game you're playing, it's over. You've lost. Your children will be better off with us. Don't fight it. I could feel the anger rising, but I fought it down. I couldn't afford to lose control. Not now. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to look Henry in the eye. You don't get to win, I said, my voice steady but filled with quiet conviction. Not this time. I'm done letting you destroy everything. This is over. Just then, the sound of sirens in the distance broke through the tension, the unmistakable wail of approaching police cars. Henry's eyes widened, and I could see the fear creeping into his expression. How did you?" he trailed off, his voice faltering. "Your plan was never as clean as you thought it was," I said with a small, knowing smile. "The game's over. The authorities are on their way." Henry's face turned pale as he turned to Lisa, his mouth opening in disbelief. But before he could say anything more, I heard the unmistakable sound of doors slamming open as the police stormed in, their flashlights sweeping over the room. As the officers moved in, securing Henry, Lisa, and the others, my phone buzzed again. My heart skipped as I glanced down at the screen. It was from McAllister. "We have your children. They're safe. But we've discovered something new. We need to talk. Now." I stood frozen in the chaos of the warehouse as the police moved in, securing Henry, Lisa, and the others. The rush of relief that hit me was overwhelming, but it was quickly overshadowed by the message on my phone. "We have your children. They're safe. But we've discovered something new. We need to talk. Now." My hands trembled as I read the words again, the gravity of the situation settling on me like a weight. I had just managed to get my children back, but now it seemed like there was more than I had even anticipated. I glanced at the officers, who were already placing Henry and Lisa in handcuffs. They would be arrested. They would be taken down for the crimes they had committed. But the phone buzzed again, pulling me back from the moment. I needed to know what McAllister had found. Had to know. I stepped away from the scene, pulling myself into the quiet corner of the warehouse, my breath shaky as I dialed McAllister's number. My fingers felt clumsy, the weight of what had just happened pressing in on me, making everything seem distant and surreal. "Mrs. Walker." McAllister's voice came through, calm but with an edge of urgency. "I'm glad to hear everything went as planned, but there's something you need to know. We've uncovered something in the investigation that you're not going to like." I could feel the blood drain from my face as I listened, my heart thudding louder in my chest. "What is it?" I asked, my voice steady, though a sense of dread was beginning to claw at me. "It's about your husband's finances," McAllister continued. "There's a pattern that we've traced back further than we expected. It's not just money laundering. It's more insidious than that." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What are you saying? What did you find?" "We've been tracking Henry's business dealings for some time now, but it's the accounts he's been involved with that are the real shock. He's been funneling money into a series of offshore accounts, yes, but here's the twist. The accounts aren't just for illegal business dealings. They're tied to a series of high-profile crimes across the globe. And it goes even further." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, the silence stretching between us as my mind tried to process what McAllister was telling me. How is this possible? I thought this was just about Henry and his greed. But now you're telling me it's connected to everything. McAllister sighed, and I could hear the weight of his words. What we didn't know until recently was that Henry has been playing a far bigger role than anyone could have guessed. He's connected to an international network of criminals. These aren't just small-time crooks. This is a syndicate, a web of corruption that spans continents. And Henry, Sarah, your husband, he's at the heart of it. I felt like the world was spinning around me. Henry, my husband, wasn't just a man who had betrayed me. He was a key player in something so much larger, something I couldn't have fathomed even in my worst nightmares. Are you saying Henry is the mastermind behind this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the reality of it all settling in like a cold, suffocating fog. No, McAllister replied. But he's deeply involved, and from what we've uncovered, he's been orchestrating several key elements of their operation. What's worse, we've also discovered something we weren't expecting. Your children, Ryan, the others, they were never just collateral damage in this situation. They were intended targets from the beginning. This goes far deeper than betrayal. This is about power, control, and manipulation. I felt my stomach lurch as the truth settled over me. They were targets. My children were in danger all along. No, I whispered, shaking my head. This can't be true. My children, they're not part of this. They're innocent. I'm afraid not, McAllister said quietly. Your husband had already planned to use them as leverage, as pawns. But we didn't know the full extent of what he had planned. We intercepted communications suggesting that Lisa, his new partner, has been working alongside him in this. We have to assume that they were preparing for a larger operation. They didn't just want to escape. They were laying the groundwork for something bigger. The reality of what he was saying hit me like a ton of bricks. Henry hadn't just betrayed me. He had put everyone in harm's way. My children. The very people I loved most in this world. All of it had been a scheme, a manipulation, a calculated move to cover up his involvement in something so dark and dangerous. How could I have missed this? I whispered to myself, feeling the weight of my failure crash over me. You didn't miss anything, McAllister said quickly. This wasn't something anyone could have predicted. But now that we know, we have a window of time to act. We need to move fast. We need to get to your children, and we need to take down this operation before it's too late. I felt a rush of determination flood through me, drowning out the self-doubt. I wouldn't let them get away with it. Not after everything they had done. Tell me what I need to do, I said, my voice firm now. Tell me how I can help. Keep your head down. Don't trust anyone around you right now. The people Henry's been working with are ruthless, and they won't hesitate to come after anyone who gets in their way. We're moving in fast, but we need you to stay clear of them for now. We'll take care of your children. You'll have them back safe, but we need to make sure we have the right evidence to make a case. We can't afford any mistakes. I nodded, my heart thudding in my chest. This was it. The final chapter of a story I had never imagined, but one I would see through to the end. I understand, I said, my voice steady. I'll do whatever it takes. As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange calmness descend over me. It wasn't over. It was far from over. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was truly in control. Just then my phone buzzed again. A new message from Ryan. Mom, they're here. I don't know what's going on, but I'm scared. I think they've been watching us. Please, we need to get out of here. Now. I stood frozen for a moment, staring at the message from Ryan. The words on the screen were simple, yet their meaning hit me with the force of a hammer. They're here. I don't know what's going on, but I'm scared. I think they've been watching us. Please, we need to get out of here. Now. The world seemed to stop for a heartbeat. My son, my children, they were in danger. I could feel the air in my lungs grow tight, and a cold chill crept down my spine. They weren't safe. No one was. I knew it wasn't just about Henry and Lisa anymore. This was about something far bigger. It had always been bigger. The shadowy figures Henry had been working with, the network of criminals, the manipulation of my family. It was all connected. My children weren't just pawns in a personal game. They were part of a much darker plot. I quickly called McAllister, my fingers trembling as I dialed his number. He picked up on the first ring. McAllister, I said, my voice shaking with urgency. They've found my children. They're in danger. Sarah. McAllister's voice was calm, but I could hear the same urgency in it. We're moving in as fast as we can. But you need to stay away. This operation is bigger than just Henry. There are people watching every move you make. Don't put yourself at risk. I'm not staying out of this, I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. My children are in danger. If you think I'm just going to sit back and wait, you're wrong. I will help you take them down. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and when McAllister spoke again, his voice was softer but no less resolute. All right. But you have to trust me on this. We're running out of time. I didn't wait for him to say more. I hung up and grabbed my keys. I couldn't sit idle any longer. I had already waited too long. They were going to pay for what they'd done. For what Henry had done. I drove to the location I knew all too well, the house. The one where my children had once played, where we had all gathered for dinner, the home I had spent so many years building. It was now a place of darkness, a place where my family had been torn apart. But it wasn't just a home anymore. It was a target. As I neared the house, I could see the shadows moving in the yard. Two figures standing close to the front door, their faces obscured by masks. They were waiting for something. For someone. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as I parked the car a few houses down. I couldn't risk getting too close, not with the people watching. I quickly texted Ryan. "Stay inside. Don't answer the door. I'm coming for you." But as I sat there in the car, watching, waiting, a cold realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. What if I wasn't the only one making plans? What if they were already one step ahead of me? I needed to move fast. I grabbed my phone and called McAllister once again, this time with a new sense of urgency in my voice. "They're here. I think they're going to make a move. Can't wait for backup. I need your team to be ready. Do not engage them alone." McAllister's voice was sharp, like a command. "You don't know what they're capable of." "I don't have a choice," I said, my voice hardening. "I'm not going to let them get away." I ended the call and quickly approached the house, moving as quietly as I could. My heart pounded in my chest as I crouched behind the bushes, watching the figures through the slats of the gate. They were still there, waiting, watching. But who were they waiting for? I heard the faint sound of a car engine in the distance, and looked up to see the headlights cutting through the dark. It was them. Henry and Lisa. They were already moving. In a blur of motion, I ran toward the side door of the house, my footsteps muffled by the overgrown grass. I had to act quickly. I had to get inside. I made it to the back door just as I saw the first figure, one of Henry's associates, move toward the front yard, looking around cautiously. I didn't stop to check if anyone saw me. I slipped inside, locking the door behind me as quietly as I could. The house felt colder now, emptier. The warmth that had once filled these rooms was long gone, replaced by a sense of foreboding. I could feel my breath coming in shallow gasps, my mind running through everything I needed to do. Find Ryan. Get him out. And stop Henry, before he could destroy us all. I crept down the hallway, moving swiftly but quietly, my ears straining for any sound. The silence in the house was unbearable. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the old wood under my feet, but nothing else. Then I heard it. Faint whisper. A step. I pressed myself against the wall, listening. Ryan's voice. He was talking. But not to me. I strained my ears, trying to make out what he was saying. "I don't know what's going on, but I can't stay here. They're going to." Then the door to the room creaked open and I froze. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice barely audible. The door opened fully, and I saw him standing there, looking pale. His face a mixture of fear and confusion. "Mom," Ryan said, his voice shaking. "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be." Before he could finish, the door to the room slammed shut behind him with a loud bang. I turned quickly, seeing the same two men who had been in the yard earlier, their faces now fully revealed. "Not so fast," one of them said, stepping forward with a malicious grin. "We were expecting you." As they advanced toward me, the realization hit me like a freight train. I had walked right into their trap, and there was no way out. The air in the room was thick with tension, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. My heart pounded in my chest as I faced the two men who had just sealed my fate. There was no escape now. I was trapped. My children, Ryan, my whole family, were caught in the middle of a deadly game that I had never fully understood until now. The man in front of me, the one who spoke, had a cruel smile on his face, his eyes glinting with malicious intent. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a deep scar running down his cheek. His companion, shorter but just as menacing, stood beside him, arms crossed, watching me with an almost bored expression. They had been waiting for me. "You made a big mistake coming here, Sarah," the first man said, his voice low and menacing. "You thought you could just waltz in and take everything back. But you're out of your league." I took a step back, my body instinctively reacting to the threat, but I didn't back down. Couldn't. I had come too far to let them intimidate me now. "I'm not afraid of you," I said, my voice shaking, but steady enough to show that I wasn't going to let them break me. "Whatever you're planning, it ends now." The man laughed, a cruel, bitter laugh that sent chills down my spine. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about you anymore. It's about control. You've already lost. All of you." I swallowed hard, trying to suppress the panic that was threatening to take over. "Where are my children?" I demanded, my voice rising, desperation slipping in despite myself. "What have you done to them?" The second man, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. His eyes narrowed as he looked me up and down. "They're fine. For now." He said the words like a threat. "But if you don't cooperate, that can change in an instant. You think you have power here, but you're just a pawn in a game that's already been decided." I shook my head, refusing to believe it. There had to be a way out of this. I couldn't let them win. Not after everything I'd been through. Not after everything I'd sacrificed. "Let me see them," I said, my voice tight, barely able to hold the edge of panic at bay. "I want to see my children. Right now." The first man, his name I still didn't know, exchanged a glance with the other, his lips curling into a smile. "You think you can walk in here, demand to see them, and they'll just hand over your children? That's not how this works." I clenched my fists, holding my ground. "If you don't, I swear I'll make sure you regret it." His smile faltered just slightly, but it quickly returned, colder than ever. "I don't think you have a choice, Sarah. You'll do what we say, or else you'll never see them again. This whole little family reunion of yours. It's over." I felt my breath quicken. I couldn't lose them. I wouldn't. I couldn't bear it. Just as I was about to speak, there was a sudden noise from behind me. A step. The unmistakable sound of someone approaching. My heart leaped in my chest. Had the police arrived? Was McAllister finally here? But when I turned around, I saw the last person I had expected. Ryan. He was standing in the doorway, his expression one of disbelief. His eyes flicking nervously between the two men and me. His clothes were rumpled, like he'd been dragged here in a hurry. The moment his eyes met mine, I saw the confusion in them. The fear. "Mom," he said, his voice shaking. "What's going on? Why are they here? Why didn't you tell me?" "Ryan," I exclaimed, my voice breaking. "You need to get out of here. They've been using you and I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. But I'll get you out of here. I swear it." Ryan's eyes flicked to the two men, and I could see the fear creeping into his expression. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't piece it together. He didn't know the full extent of the danger. He didn't know just how deep we were in. "Listen to me, Ryan. You have to trust me. Get out of here. Now." But as I spoke, I saw the two men closing in, stepping forward, their eyes hard with malice. They weren't about to let him go. Not without a fight. "Ryan, stay back," I ordered as I stepped between him and the men, putting myself in the line of fire. "I'll protect you. Just trust me." The first man grinned, clearly enjoying the twisted situation. "You're so brave, Sarah. But you're not in control here. None of you are." I looked at him, my heart racing, but my mind sharp and focused. "You'll regret this," I spat, my eyes narrowing in a steely glare. "I've already taken everything from you. I've watched you fall. And I will make sure you lose." The man's grin faltered for a moment, but it returned quickly. "You're out of your depth. You always were. And now, it's over." I didn't wait for him to finish. I grabbed Ryan's arm and pulled him toward the door, trying to escape before they could stop us. But the second man lunged forward, grabbing my arm with a grip that felt like iron. "Don't even think about it," he growled. "You're not going anywhere." I twisted out of his hold, using every ounce of strength I had, but it wasn't enough. They were too strong. And then, just as I was about to lose all hope, I heard a voice. A voice I hadn't expected to hear, but one that made my blood run cold in an instant. "Let them go." I turned around, my breath catching in my throat as I saw the figure standing in the doorway. It was McAllister. But there was something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "You can't let them leave," I said, my voice pleading. McAllister stepped forward, his expression grim, his eyes locking on mine. "Sarah, you don't know everything," he said quietly. The words hung in the air like a dark omen. McAllister's voice echoed through the dimly lit warehouse, his words lingering in the air like a shadow. "Sarah, you don't know everything." I felt the floor shift beneath my feet. The air in the room seemed to close in on me, my breath growing shallow as I tried to make sense of what McAllister had just said. My children were still in danger, Henry and Lisa were about to escape. And now McAllister was telling me I didn't know the full truth. I looked at him, my heart racing. "What do you mean? What's going on, McAllister? What don't I know?" He stepped forward, his eyes filled with something darker than I had ever seen. "It's not just about Henry, Sarah. It never was." I felt a cold sweat on my skin as I stared at him. "What are you saying?" McAllister didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced at the two men who had been guarding the entrance. One of them stepped forward, a briefcase in hand. McAllister took it without a word, opened it, and pulled out a thick stack of papers. I could see the faint glow of the warehouse lights reflecting off the edges of the documents. McAllister handed them to me, his eyes unwavering. "Read this," he said, "and then you'll understand why everything you've been fighting for, everything you thought you knew, has been a lie." With trembling hands, I took the papers from him. As I flipped through the pages, my eyes scanned the contents, and the truth hit me like a punch to the stomach. The documents were filled with financial transactions, offshore accounts, shell companies, names I didn't recognize, and then my name several times. My breath caught in my throat. "Name. Why is my name on these papers?" I whispered, the words barely leaving my mouth. "Why is this happening? What is all of this?" McAllister's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "Because you've been more involved than you think. Your husband wasn't just hiding money from you. He was using you as a front." I stared at him, the room spinning around me as everything I thought I knew began to crack, like the surface of a shattered mirror. "Your name was on legal documents for several companies he controlled," McAllister continued. "You were unknowingly tied into this web. He used you as a cover for his illegal dealings. Your children. Ryan was always the intended heir. But only after he got everything from you first." I felt the blood drain from my face. I was a pawn in Henry's game. I'd been his shield, his excuse. He had never intended to let me have the money, the life, the family. He had been playing a much longer game. All of it, the affair with Lisa, the divorce, the manipulations, had been part of a larger scheme to ensure I was the one left holding the bag, the one who took the fall. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. "My children," I whispered. "They were never safe. He always planned this. He used me to hide everything. And now—" My voice trailed off as the weight of his words hit me like a tidal wave. McAllister stepped closer, his expression solemn. "It was always about the money, Sarah. But Henry made one mistake. He underestimated you. He thought he could control you forever. But now it's over." I looked up at him, my heart racing. "You're telling me it's not just a betrayal anymore. He's been using me all along. He's been using us to cover his crimes, his empire. And I didn't even know." McAllister nodded slowly. "He didn't count on you fighting back. But now we've got everything we need. We've got the proof. We've already alerted the authorities. Henry and Lisa won't be able to run. This ends now, Sarah." I closed my eyes, letting the truth wash over me. I had spent so many months in the dark, thinking I was the one who had been betrayed. But now I saw the full picture. Henry's betrayal had gone far beyond our marriage. It was a betrayal of my trust, of everything I had believed in. And it was time to end it. Time to stop letting him dictate my life. I looked at McAllister one last time. So what happens now? We bring them down. Yes, McAllister said, his voice steady. The authorities are already on their way. They'll take care of Henry and Lisa. As for you and your children, we'll make sure they're safe. I turned toward the door, my mind still racing. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. A sense of relief. A sense of power. Just then I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I turned, my heart pounding, and saw Ryan walking toward me. His eyes were filled with uncertainty, but there was something else there now, something I hadn't seen before. Understanding. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice full of hesitation. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand what you were going through." I walked toward him, and without thinking, I pulled him into an embrace. "It's okay," I whispered. "It's all going to be okay now." He pulled back slightly, his eyes meeting mine. "What happens now, Mom? What about everything we've lost?" I took a deep breath, looking around at the warehouse, the wreckage of everything I had known. "We rebuild. Together. And we make sure nothing like this ever happens again." I smiled through the tears that were threatening to fall. The truth had been laid bare, but the battle wasn't over. Henry, Lisa, and the others would face the consequences of their actions. But now my children and I could finally begin to heal. And for the first time in years I could breathe. Months later I stood outside my house, watching the sun set over the horizon. The weight of everything was still with me, but it didn't feel as heavy anymore. Henry was behind bars, his empire shattered, and Lisa was nowhere to be found. The authorities had tracked down every last piece of his criminal network, and my family was safe. Ryan came out onto the porch, his expression thoughtful. "I know it wasn't easy, Mom," he said quietly, "but I'm proud of you. I don't think I could have done it without you." I smiled at him, pulling him into a hug. "You don't have to. We're in this together, always." We stood there for a moment, the evening air cooling around us, the sound of birds chirping in the distance. Life was far from perfect, but we had made it through the storm. And now we could finally start over.